Would I spend $249 on gold clip when I have standard clip? That's a question somebody asked on a recent video. I'm going to go through each of my comments on this oversampling video because there was so much good discussion around oversampling, mixing, mastering, little things I missed, little things I didn't consider, which I want to share with you guys because I think there's a lot to learn here, even for myself. But I want to answer the question that you guys clicked onto the video because that was sort of the clickbait to get you guys in. All right. Would I spend $249 on gold clip when I already have standard clip? Are the differences enough to justify the price? Here's the thing. I got sent the NFR licenses for gold clip. I've used it, and it didn't make it through to my daily work schedule. Like on my normal sessions, I don't use gold clip. I tried it. It has really good features under the hood. It isn't a bad plugin. It's actually a really well-designed and smartly thought-out plugin. I just have a workflow with standard clip that's easy for me. That works. That I know the sound that's going to come out of it. I didn't want to learn a new plugin. I didn't see such a significant, great, insane difference that it was going to stop me from using what I was already using or the options I already had. So it didn't make it into my workflow. Now, would I spend $249 on gold clip? No, because if I wanted to, I would have. Even with the NFR license, something I'm going to say is if you see it on this channel, it's because I'm using it daily in the studio. And even if I didn't have the NFR license and I trialed gold clip and I felt so compelled that it was such a great plugin, I would have went out and spent the money. And those are the things I want to show on the channel, the things I'm using in the studio daily. That said, that does not mean it's a bad plugin. And I want to make this very clear. I know a lot of really good engineers who stand by gold clip as a really good plugin solution or clipping solution. And I can understand why. So there's that. It's horses for courses. Not everybody drives the same car. Not everybody has the same mobile phone. Not everybody has to be on the exact same platform to be doing the best and greatest. There are different tools. There are different things out there. That just wasn't for me, and it is for others. So look, if you're trying to find an answer to whether you should get gold clip or not, you go download the trial, go try it for yourself and really dig into it because there are good features there. They're just not the features that have made its way through to my workflow. That's simple. Now let's get into all the other questions. Dobinyi asked, I'd venture as far as 4 times oversampling is overkill on a clipper. It looks nice on an analyzer, but I'm willing to bet everyone would have an extremely difficult time to pick out 1 versus 16 in a blind test. I'm going to disagree here with you, even though I said good observations, because he did make some good observations I'll get to, but aliasing distortion is something mastering engineers can pick out. 1 times oversampling, so there's no oversampling basically. If there's enough distortions present and it's causing aliasing distortion, which does happen, mastering engineers that are worth their weight in gold can pick it out. The difference between 8 and 16 times or 4 and 8 times is going to be way more difficult because it's minimizing those distortions, but when they're present, you can hear aliasing distortion off the bat. He refers to doing blind tests. Can you identify it more than 8 times out of 10? I agree. Blind tests have to have a high success rate. So blind A/B tests, if you're doing 6 out of 10, do another 10 tests. Do 20, 30, 40 tests to make sure that you're not just 50-50 flipping a coin. You're actually consistently getting above 7.5 times out of 10. You'd be in the good books. Next, I always go as high as my system can handle. My transients are still popping those. Should I be doing less than 8 times or 16 times oversampling? I don't know what he means by my transients are still popping though. Should you be doing less? We did the tests in the video and 4 times oversampling was more than enough for 10 decibels of clipping for the aliasing distortion to be buried enough under the fundamental signal that it was feeding it. So I would say if your system's handling it, 8/16 is fine. Doing 4 isn't bad, but anyway, we'll move on to the next one. Aliasing, everybody calls me out on this. I don't know how to pronounce it. I will say it 1,000 times on this channel and I'll still never get it right. And it's not because I don't try. It's because I can't be fucked trying. So I'm not going to bother trying to change how I say a word. It's like, you guys know what I'm talking about. So Miller Boy, I appreciate it. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit funny about that one, but I just struggle with some words. So you got to excuse me. What sample rate are you working at? Now, I work at the native sample rate of the material that's sent to me. That particular session was 48K. If I get something sent at 96, it'll be at 96. If it's a 44.1, at 44.1. Just to keep things simple, if a mix gets updated, I don't have to drag it through to a sample rate conversion because I don't like using the native DAW one. In Pro Tools, I prefer to use Isotope audio editor for up and down sampling. I don't want to have to do a whole nother process, so I start my sessions at the native sample rate. Is there any moment where oversampling to 1024 times is useful? I saw this option on Acoustica plugins. My simple answer is no, a waste of resources. Why would you need to sample to 1024 times? And if somebody has an answer as to why there is a necessity to have such stupid oversampling, let me know, please. And actually, you know what? I invite an answer to that, because if I could learn a circumstance where 1024 times oversampling is necessary, better. That would be awesome. The true question is, can anyone really tell listening to the master when oversampling has been used and when it hasn't? Now, this is interesting, and this is a video in itself I got to do. Other people at the end of the process, so the people who haven't heard the recording, the production, the mix before mastering, most people won't be able to tell if there's what distortions were present before the mix and what distortions are present after the master. So he's right, nobody's going to know that the aliasing distortion wasn't there in the mix and you brought it in the master. I get it. But it's sort of like a professional duty or responsibility of care to make sure that you do as little harm as possible. So in my opinion, if you know something can help remedy an artifact or something that degrades the audio, if you know there's a process there to help get the best quality audio, regardless of whether people will know or not you used it, you should be trying your best at every stage to implement that. That's my answer. Audio nerd little cuz says, I have a question. When rendering, does it matter to activate oversampling in each plugin that has it, or is it like the last plugin master plan to oversample? Okay, so I get what he's saying. Should you just have the plugin on your master bus oversampled, or the individual plugins on channels oversampled? Here's the answer. Any processor on individual channels in a mix that are causing distortions which are above Nyquist, so above, if you're working at 48, anything over 24 kilohertz, if you've got harmonics that are getting produced above that, you want to oversample to stop the distortion folding back down. So on individual plugins. And the same goes on your master bus. If you've got a plugin that's introducing distortions that goes above Nyquist, oversample that. I would be working with the oversampling on the whole time, because you don't want to be mixing with frequencies in there, the aliasing distortion frequencies, that are going to be removed when you bounce it. You want to be hearing a one-to-one render of what you're going to actually be printing on the final mix. Is your session of 44.1 or 48? Looks like 48, but the signal of 14K is definitely close to the Nyquist at a high level. Not practical unless you're mastering a day at the beach, for example. Okay, oh man, American Tune Right always gives such awesome comments on videos. Genuinely, he really thinks about what he's about to say and gives a good comment. High sample should be determined by case, like vocals or guitars, especially with sessions under 88.2 or overdriving plugins. 96 sessions get a bad rap for some reason, but it's best, in my opinion, because of Nyquist, time stretches, or pitch-related plugins. Yes, he makes some really good points here. And I responded, I'd love to see more recording engineers diving down into these details, because what he's referring to here, time stretching, pitch-related plugins, and manipulation of recorded material, which happens much earlier in the process before mixing and mastering. And it'd be really interesting to see the same captures at 44.1 and 96 in two separate sessions then be produced and manipulated, and what the final sound ends up as. That's not a job for me. That's a job for a recording engineer or producer to do on YouTube, but I'd be interested to see that. I'd watch that video. Lil Wombat says, I was playing with oversampling yesterday. I crushed a mix with standard clip, had one on 2 times, the other time on 32. I then set it up so it would randomly switch between which one was playing. I could not tell when it was switching. I tried to look whenever it was on 32 and got it wrong quite often. And he says, and I actually asked him, how much clipping was it doing? And he goes, I'm going to try 10 dB. I'm going to try it with a few different songs. Another time, I was using Ableton LFO on bin, so I had no influence when it swapped. 2 times oversampling when you've got 10 decibels of clipping. The aliasing distortion, at least in my tests, was audible to me. 32, you're not going to hear much aliasing distortion, but on 2 times, you should be able to hear it if you're clipping 10 decibels below your highest peak. So I don't know, man. I would just do some more tests, maybe more isolated tests, like an individual kick drum getting clipped or a sustained 808 getting clipped, because then you'll be able to hear the aliasing distortion sustain over time. So just have that clipping and then go through your oversamples and you'll be able to hear it a bit easier. That's always an option to train your ears with. This is a really good one because this sort of pokes a little bit of something I've put out as a professional. I was analyzing one of your masters on Spotify, the Bad Touch Pelican Tribs. That's a really good song. I think it went gold or platinum over in Poland. It was a cool record to work on. I have the browser audio running through Span and it says True Peak was reaching plus 0.5. Do you know why this would be the case since you use True Peak limiting? I'm just wondering if use True Peak even matters if it's still going over anyways. Typically that's because I have my limiter set up right up at the ceiling. It goes down on Spotify or YouTube or whatever. That's a lossy format. It increases the peak level. Now you're probably wondering, Nick, if you know it's going to go over 0 and clip literally, why do you let that happen? Now I have an auditioning process for this. So what I do is, I haven't got my DAW up here while I'm shooting this video. I probably should have had I known this question was coming. I use the codec auditioner in Isotope. So I audition it at 96 kilobits AAC, and that will convert the file or the playback to AAC 96 kilobits per second. That's a lossy format, which means my peaks end up going over 0. Then what I do in the DAW is put a hard clipper on at 0 decibels. So it cuts all those sample peaks, all those peaks actually going over 0. And then I get to hear how it would sound distorted through a really bad converter. Now, I audition this master the exact same way, and what that allows me to do is I can hear if those peaks over 0.5 are so bad that it's a negative side effect, or it's something that is pretty inaudible. So then I can tweak my limiters accordingly. So in short, codec audition into a hard clipper at the ceiling and you can hear those peaks going over, or it clips those peaks going over so you can hear if there's any issues. Oh my God, that shirt is so nice. Where did you get that? You're probably, and then somebody goes, incoming merch. No incoming merch. The Anti-Loudness Club. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little spiel. It's something better than a merch drop. It's nothing you have to pay for. It's something I'm working on in the background. It just sparks something in my head to do something. That's an old shirt from like 2-3 years ago, t-shirt. And funny story, I usually use that t-shirt as pajamas. And that morning was a crazy morning with the kids. I rushed out to the studio. I still had that pajama top on underneath my jumper. Got to the studio. I had a call with Ian Shepherd. And then I've taken my jumper off and I go, fuck, I still got this shirt on. And then we sort of had a laugh on it before the call. I'm like, oh, that's what happens when you got kids. And then I thought, Anti-Loudness Club. I've got an idea. So if you want to know more about that idea, I would say you should sign up to my email newsletter in the link below, because when something does drop, you're going to want to see it. You're going to know about it, and it won't cost you a cent. I promise it won't cost you a cent. And somebody asked, is it a plugin? It is not a plugin, but it's something I want to do to help others. So just keep an eye out for that. What do you think of the newish anti-derivative anti-aliasing algorithms, ADAA? It solves the anti-aliasing problem better than just oversampling alone. I need somebody to highlight this and leave comments in the description below. I don't know what anti-derivative anti-aliasing is. No clue. Haven't heard it. Got any resource recommendations? I'm waiting to hear back from them because I want to touch on that on the channel if it's something that actually is interesting and interests me at least. So next one, I like 8 times on limiters and clippers if they have the option. Past 8 times 16 doesn't get any better to my ear, but I can hear an improvement going from 4 to 8 in some songs, especially when the limiter is hitting constantly during the loudest section of the song. And I say past 8 times, no need. I want somebody to make a case for it though. If there's a quantifiable DSP reason for going much higher, I'd love to know. I don't know why I was so dismissive of Hubert's comment there. He's actually a really cool guy when it comes to like leaving comments and engaging. But basically what I was saying is, for me, past 8 times isn't my sort of shtick. And I do want somebody to make a case for high oversampling, if there is a case. And I'm curious for people who work in DSP or programming these plugins, if they can actually say, this is why we have such high oversampling options. Why? Why do you need that much oversampling? Let us know. We want to know. People want to know where there's a practical application for such high oversampling. Sinclair Sound said 4 times is probably fine as the distortion is program dependent. We will almost never hear static tones, important because our ears are very good at picking up things that are not like others. In this case, ever-changing music and static tones. I might try to reproduce this with clip, but feeding a dynamic program. Spot on. He makes a real good point. The way I set up my test was the static tone underneath the music and then the aliasing distortion blend, like the delta of the aliasing blended until we couldn't hear it anymore based on the times of oversampling. He does make a point that isn't a perfect one-to-one apples-apples test. It was sort of a faux test to sort of set up some boundaries, which we worked within. He does make a point there. I think the 808 test, which I recommended to a previous commenter in this video, might be a good one we might do in the future, because I think that would be very telling of more musical or more dynamic material, how those aliasing distortions actually transpire. K-Clip has offline processing. I set it to 32 at the moment, which I agree is an overkill. 4 times is plenty, 8 times is max, but I believe 32 is unnecessarily slowing down my bounces. Nice point about using limiter in tandem. And I just said, yep, that's an overkill. At least in my opinion, in my tests, 32 times oversampling is an overkill. No qualms. I chose oversampling settings by the feel and sound of others. In the Groove, Standard Clip, and Acoustica plugins, I prefer the sound of 4x. SSL native bus, I prefer the transients on 2x. TDR, precise setting. All other plugins off. No qualms always leaves awesome comments too. I don't care about the technical reasons of aliasing. It's all about how it sounds and feels that dictates my choices when mixing. This is really good. This part of his comment, it is how it sounds and feels that dictate my choices in mixing. And the reason why I want to highlight that, absolute reason I want to highlight that there, is because a lot of people I've seen have been saying they set it to like 2 times or 4 times when they're mixing, but then they change the oversampling rate just before they bounce. And it's like, well, whoa, wait a second. That actually changes the way the processor interacts with the signal. So you're actually changing your mix before you bounce it. And it might be very subtle, but having it at the setting that's going to inform you on the decisions you make when you're mixing is really important. So I think he has a really good point there. Hi, I was surprised you like using true peak limiting. I usually don't like how true peak limiting handles the transients, but I have to say one of your last video about how limiter can be disturbing the low end was very informative and I need to give it a try. Anyway, thanks for what you're bringing to the community. Okay, Evil One. That's weird saying that. Evil One. No, you're not evil. That's just your handle. True peak limiting, I actually left this comment on the video. It's true peak limiting alive, what you need to know. True peak limiting is a really interesting process the way it's done, because the ballistics of the limiter doesn't necessarily change, like the way the attack and release works or the threshold works. It oversamples the sidechain signal, and I've got a full video on the exact detail of why and how that operates and all the technical documentation. So I really go check out this video if you're still confused about true peak limiting changing the sound, because it's pretty eye-opening. I'll leave another comment with that here as well, because somebody says the same thing about true peak limiting. Many engineers say it kills transients, and regarding facts, they argue most of today's music wave files, true peak is above 0, and that louder is better. Louder is different. Louder is not necessarily better. Bit more to come on that in a future video. On the other hand, I understand true peak mode is here to prevent distortion after some convergence in the analog domain. I tend to not use true peak as most pro music do not care. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm right. Great content as always, though. Look, for me, the reason why I use true peak limiting isn't about avoiding the distortions. I'm still all the way up at the ceiling, and when it gets converted to lossy formats, I know that I'm going to have overs on over 0, and I'm auditioning those overs and making sure they're not harsh with a codec preview. However, what I will say is that when it comes to archiving your masters, because your masters are like a timestamp of that intellectual property in time. It gets archived, it gets given to the artist, gets given to the publisher. It is something that should be remaining as full resolution as possible. You don't want to have things going over 0 on that file, because if ever anything has to be derived from it, you've got peaks over 0, which isn't good. Simple. That's why I true peak limit. Love blue blockers, highly recommend. Felix Gray, they're a little pricey. I love them. These, I haven't worn them in videos because I've sort of felt weird about it, but here's why I wear these glasses. They block blue light out of the laptop. I'm not trying to be one of these weird, like conspiracy or weird sort of people. I don't know. This is the reason why. My eyes get really sore sitting in a dark room for 12 hours, and then I want to get out on the road and drive home to my family safely without my eyes being dry. These have really helped. Simple. It's important to consider the base rate when choosing oversampling rates. Yes, TK, you are on the money. I missed this in my video. Overlooked. Yes, very true. I overlooked this in the video. I assume the video was made from the perspective of 48K base rate, but it wasn't mentioned. 96 would only require half the oversampling as a 48. This is correct. The base rate should dictate your oversampling. If I'm working on a 96K session, I'm oversampling at 2. I did not say that in the video. Slap on my wrist. He's on the money with that one. I think it's important to think about 4 times what? 44.1, 96, 200,000. Again, the Jazzy Fizzle drummers on the money, the same as TK. Krillin Danshin, max attack and min release is documented and well-known pair of settings for L2. You wouldn't push these settings 10 dB. What he's talking about is the clipper setting on the Pro L2. It's a preset where the maximum attack, the minimum release is set, so just hard clips. More information on that. I've done a few videos on the Pro L2, and I really want to speak to somebody from FabFilter. I reached out to one of the people who worked on that plugin, and I never got a response, but they left such a great detailed response on one of my FabFilter videos, which I wish I could get them on to chat more about. So if anybody knows people of FabFilter, let me know. I'd love to talk to you about FabFilter Pro L2 in more depth so I can understand it better. I can help other people understand it better because it's a great plugin, but I really want to get down to the geeky behind it. I'm not sure if you mentioned it later in the vid, but the way you're doing the test is as if we're assuming that all processing is done on the master or mix bus or on a single track. This is the thing. I get what he's saying. For me, I'm mastering 90% of my records, so I'm showing it on a master bus, this oversampling. However, it would be different for, say, a mix saturation. Is it being used at every stage, or if at 4 times on the master sample, is it inaudible? Oh, there's more to this comment. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and then he also talks about the base sample rate can also make a big difference to how much aliasing distortion it produces. Again, it's on the same track as those other 2 commenters about what sample rate are you working from. Junovi gets honorable mention in this video because he gave me the idea to just respond to all these comments in a video. You could make a series for replying back to comments you make a video on. Good idea. That's this video here. This is such a cool video. So glad I found your channel recently. Thank you so much. Harrison Frone, thanks for being here. James Arthur Hanley, not for nothing, but even on YouTube, I couldn't hear the aliasing of 4 times. Only at 8 times did it go. Oh, he could hear it at 4 times. Only at 8 times did it go away. Also, your takeaways on limiting are quite interesting. Thanks for the content. James Arthur, hats off to you that you could hear it 4 times. I struggled. I really did struggle to hear it 4 times. That's my honest. If you could hear it clearly, that's awesome. That's great. Especially with the lossy compression of audio on YouTube. That's pretty damn good. Michael Stiles, so you want to tell me that the 256 times oversampling on standard clip is unnecessary? Yes, I believe 256 times oversampling is an overkill. And the final comment, I use 4 times oversampling while producing, but 8 or 16 times when rendering. In the menu, you can select that under offline. I said this, and DJ Void left a good comment here, but for me, don't change your oversampling when you're rendering. Never do that. Work at the oversampling for the final mix or the final master. It's going to inform your decisions based on what you're hearing. Don't change it for the print. There you have it. And until next time, take care.